Welcome to the Global Investor Podcast, a show that focuses on helping foreign investors enter the lucrative U.S. real estate market. Host Charles Carillo combines decades of real estate investing experience with a professional background in international banking to interview experts in all areas of U.S. real estate investing. Now, here's your host, Charles Carillo.
Do you have money sitting in the stock market and you're worried about it? Or worse, you have money sitting at the bank, not keeping up with inflation? My name is Charles Carillo, founder and managing partner of Harborside Partners. And since 2006, I've been investing my money and my family's money into income-producing properties. These are real assets, real properties with real addresses that produce real cash flow. At Harborside Partners, we provide passive investors who love real estate with a turnkey investing solution. If you want to put your money to work in real estate but can't find deals, don't have the time to get funding, and the last thing that productive people want to do is manage real estate. We find the deals, we fund the deals, and we manage the tenants, the termites, and the properties. Partner with us at investwithharborside.com. That's investwithharborside.com. Go to investwithharborside.com. If you love real estate, you like the idea of passive income, and believe that income-producing properties will appreciate over time, go to investwithharborside.com. That's investwithharborside.com.
Welcome to another episode of the Global Investors Podcast. I'm your host, Charles Carillo. Today we have Jay Tenenbaum. He has acquired over 1,000 distressed mortgage notes and properties in over 40 states. Previously, Jay worked 20 years as a former debt collection professional. He is currently a partner and president at Scottsdale Mortgage Investments, where his firm has closed over 300 deals on mortgage loans valued over $75 million with an average discount of 40%. So thank you so much for being on the show today, Jay.
My pleasure, Charles. Thanks for having me.
So give us a little bit of a background, both personally and professionally, prior to getting involved with real estate investing and mortgage note investing.
Sure. So I've got a very kind of a interesting journey, if you want to say. So I grew up in Denver, Colorado. My mom owned a catering service since I was a little kid. My dad owned restaurants. So, I was always exposed to that life and didn't think, really didn't know anything other than that. The one regret I have in that is as I grew up, I was a busboy, waiter, bartender. I had the whole run of the kitchen of the restaurant, and I never spent any time in the kitchen. So I can't cook, and I really regret that actually. But one night, my father and I, which we had dinner just all by ourselves, which wasn't at home, wasn't at his restaurant. It was kind of a pink unicorn kind of thing. And he's like, "Hey, get out of this business, go get in a profession." I'm like, all right. I'm like 22 years old, I think, at the time. And I've been, bartending and making had a lot of cash in my pocket, and, a young guy. And I kind of knew, it kind of resonated because I was working with guys who were like in their late 20s, early 30s going, having a great time bartending. But I knew I like a professional sports career, I didn't want to be their age doing that still, right? So I checked out how to go to law school, go back to school, finish my undergrad in a year, which I was on a mission. I wanted to finish my undergrad in 1 year, not more, because I wouldn't go to law school after that, and then go to law school the following fall, which I accomplished through a lot of hard work. I took 26 units the first semester of that journey, and really worked really hard at that. It was kind of easy. I had 2 classes that were only paper. I only had to write papers, and I had 5 hours as an internship. So it wasn't really like I was a brainiac, because I'm not wired for that at all. Anyway, got accepted to law school in California, not in Colorado. Was kind of disappointed, but moved to California and stayed. And then owned a debt collection law practice with my wife for 20 plus years. Got out of that in 2008. Started investing in judgment liens in California from 2009 to 2012. So now I'm starting to learn more about, title and priorities and things like that. Our model was very strict. We weren't hitting banks or garnishing wages, stuff that I've done for 20 years. I was done with that, right? So I learned how to do that, because in my law practice, I was too far inside it. The only real estate experience I had was owning the houses I lived in. And so, things changed there. I left that company in 2012, got the opportunity to do a guy's workshop in San Diego, Note Buying for Dummies workshop in August 2013. And, 5 minutes into the workshop, I'm like, you know what? This is just another debt instrument that I've been dealing with, all my life, pretty much. So as I like to say, I've been in debt all my life, just not personally.
So tell us a little bit about exactly kind of what your firm actually does now and what your investment strategy is.
Certainly. So we buy distressed mortgage notes nationwide. We have invested in over 40 plus states in the course of my career. We're buying primarily now portfolios from large hedge funds. Basically, what buying a distressed mortgage is, you bought a mortgage, you stop paying on it. It gets sold from bank, the originating lender, Bank of America, whoever, down to hedge fund A and Goldman, and Goldman resells it, or HUD or Freddie or Fannie sells it to a larger hedge fund, and then it gets kind of coming down the food chain at a little different pricing. The discounts are still phenomenal. They've gone up, with the economy, they've gone up and down a little bit, as they will, but you're still getting at a decent discount. Our strategies have sort of evolved and changed with the times. In the beginning, several before the interest rate hikes, whatever. I mean, you pivot, you have to pivot, you have to be resourceful, right? Before the interest rate hikes, we're in the position, we are the bank. So we're pretty aggressive in, taking our assets to foreclosure, because if, a mortgage note sitting on a shelf is not going to work itself out, for the most part, right? So we're pretty aggressive starting foreclosure, and either we were getting paid off at auction, meaning we're owed, let's say we bought a loan for $50,000 and we're owed $100,000. And with the economy being what it was, property values being what they were, it was some third party, investor at attending the live auction somewhere would pay, $150,000, $200,000. Now, we didn't get that extra money. We just got paid off $100,000, right? And some of the results we got over the last couple of years have just been extraordinary about what these guys are paying for this stuff, right? I'll tell you a quick story. There was a note, we went to auction in Hawaii, and we were owed like $340,000, and we bought it for like $270,000, right? We owned it for like 2 months and it went to sale. And the winning bidder, in 15 minutes, boom, done. And the court required, though, in that state, that the court confirms the auction sale. And because of the spike in COVID at the time, this was late 21, the court kept postponing the hearing. So while the auction was June of 21, it was postponed from September to November. It finally went off in January of 22. Now, the good news is that the third-party bidder at the sale in June still got the property. The bad news is, because it was allowed to be bid again at the confirmation hearing, instead of paying $343 for it, he paid $540 for it.
Wow.
I mean, it's crazy. And I actually saw it. I was on vacation in Honolulu a few years ago. Blue collar neighborhood, just nothing to write home about. But that's kind of the things that go on now. As the economy has changed a little bit, and let's say, for example, I bought it for $50. I was owed $100, but the property's only worth $120. Right. And let's say I wanted to take it back because I could, fix it, flip it, and make it worth $250. I'm just, giving you a hypothetical. So because I can play with legal balance, maybe I'll set legal balance at full legal balance high. So I'm almost guaranteed I'll get it back. And prior to interest rates, we were okay with doing a lot of that, right? Because our flips were outstanding. Now that the market's changed, if that scenario happens, we're probably would set it for less than what we're owed, but more than what we paid for, just because we prefer to be taken out at auction still. Okay. We really don't want to flip. The other thing we do is we've gone back to kind of our roots. We're really doing a lot more aggressive on doing loan modification with borrowers and keeping them in their homes.
Okay. So all these assets are all residential homes?
Correct. They're all secured by single family 1 to 4 units. That's our bread and butter.
Can you explain, you went back to it about what's owed on the property, and then you had 2 different balances, let's say, for that, a regular one and a legal one. Can you explain that? Sure.
So let's say you take out a mortgage for $100,000 and you pay on it for 5 years. And the principal and all the payments you made, a certain amount is applied to the principal reduction. And let's say the balance is $95,000 the day you stop making payments. That's called the unpaid principal balance. That number doesn't change. The legal balance, however, is the unpaid principal balance, and then adding all the accrued interest and arrearages and penalties and late fees that accrue since the time you stop paying till the time we go to sale. And then there's also a third component called corporate advances, things that you pay as the investor out of pocket. property taxes, attorney's fees, servicing, insurance. Add it all up together, that becomes your legal balance. And that's, anything between what you pay for it and your legal balance, I call monopoly money.
Oh, okay. That's it. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah, because you can change that. That's all up to your discretion at that point, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Very interesting. So when you're working with it, explain like a current loan modification that you're doing. Because I saw loan modifications. I had like contractors back in like 08, 09, and they got loan modifications because they were losing their houses, and they showed me the paperwork. And really, what the banks were doing was taking their outstanding and turning into 40-year mortgages. You know what I mean?
Right.
How are you working with people with homeowners that have gotten behind, and how are you working with them now in this new interest rate environment we're in?
Sure. So good question. So first of all, we do our loss mitigation because of our experience and my team. We do our loss mitigation in-house, so we're much more effective than a big bag bank or even the servicers in general. And in the past, when interest rates were low, you would set your loan modification. Okay, so when you're doing a loan modification, you basically can adjust any or all of the following: your principal balance, the balance, the interest rate, the term, and the monthly payment. Okay, and typically in the past, we would set the interest rate. We typically, as a baseline, we're going to reset the mortgage at 30, let's say 30 years. We're not going to try to re-amortize it over 20 to 2.5 years. It's just too complicated. So we pretty much, as a baseline, just do a new 30-year term. Great. The payment is usually structured with, treating a borrower with dignity and respect and saying, hey, how can I help you? What can you afford? We're not demanding you have to pay this, you have to pay that like a bank would, because you know what? If they can't pay that, their current mortgage, our demands will only go on deaf ears. Will they lip service or they'll default anyway? When they're offering to us what they can do, our default rate is minimized substantially. Interest rate, in the past, we would set it arbitrarily high, like 7.5, 8, 9%, right? The idea was to incentivize a borrower, the concept, incentivize a borrower to ultimately refinance and take us out, fix your credit, whatever. That's a great, conceptual analysis. Reality of life is a borrower in the Midwest is too concerned about buying their beer and cigarettes and paying off their truck, and they really will never do what's necessary to fix their credit or whatever they need to refinance. So it just becomes, as long as they can make the monthly payment, they don't care. They really aren't sophisticated enough to understand the more interest, they can lower their payment or the interest that they're saving. They're just saying, hey, I can make it monthly payment. I'm going to keep my home. We're treating them with dignity and respect. It's all a good day. Now, in this environment, since interest rates are 7-8%, we don't really vary the interest rate much because it's still about the same incentive. What can you afford, right? We want to keep you in your house. We don't want your house. And what can you afford? And just structure it around like an algebra equation. What can you afford? We're going to give you a new 30-year term. The interest rate is going to, be what you solve for at the end of the day. Because, and then the last component is you play with the monopoly money. Either we've done a lot of variety of things of you pay a portion of what's the rearages and we'll waive the rest, or we'll put the rest on the back end. Or if you can't really have a substantial, if we're buying stuff at such a discount, and once you do the modification, as long as our returns on the monthly payment is good, the monopoly money really is going to break a deal. I'm not going to sit there and kill a deal over you can't afford a $10,000 down payment to clear your rearages. I'll put it on the back end.
Yeah.
And just restructure the rule.
So for exit strategies that you have, really, the loan modification sounds like really the best way because you don't have to go through the whole foreclosure process. What do you go through the foreclosure process very regularly? Is it a high percentage, let's say, of mortgages that go, that are not performing well? You know what I mean? Do you go that route, or you really focus on the loan modification? Because I would think that's kind of the best way of going.
Well, okay, we're an investor, and money never sleeps. So it's really a matter of a couple things. One is I would do a loan mod with everybody, but the common denominator is the borrower's got to cooperate. Yeah. Not all borrowers will cooperate. So we're really a fan of initiating foreclosure pretty aggressively, because I always say action dictates reaction. You start foreclosure, you call a borrower for 3 weeks straight, he doesn't respond to you. You start foreclosure, now he's calling you. So again, we do foreclose on those who can't get out of our way. Now, having said that, we also buy a lot of reverse mortgages. So the borrower's already dead. So you can't do a loan mod with a dead person.
Yeah. So one of the things is that with these different exit strategies you have and how you're dealing with non-performing notes, other than getting a large discount, which I was reading, it was 40%, which I said in the intro, how else are able to mitigate risk, or investors are able to mitigate risk when they're doing this mortgage note investing like you do?
Well, when you're buying it at a discount, it helps certainly, because and the mitigation of risk is twofold. One, you're buying it at a discount, so you're giving yourself a nice buffer in case of the oops, right? It's a lot different than you're doing a fix and flip and you tear up the carpet and there's a crack in the foundation. You're kind of stuck, right? Number two is we just briefly touched on only a couple of exit strategies. We've figured out over the course variations of one or the other. We've probably got over 20 different exit strategies available to us, right? So there's always a pivot or just resourcefulness of saying, hey, if this doesn't, we analyze our analytical team will analyze our preferred strategy, but that doesn't mean that it'll be the strategy, right? Because you can't predict a borrower cooperating to a loan mod. You can predict with a little better certainty than that of whether or not you're going to get paid off at auction, especially how you set your minimum bid at times, right? Now you take the property, but then let's say the property doesn't sell. Now you take the property back. Now what are you going to do with it? I could sell it as is. I could sell it on seller financing. I could flip it myself, right? I could do keep it as a rental. I can do a lot of different things. So we have our preferred strategies, but we have a variety of strategies. So that's number two to mitigate your risk. Number three, most important, is do your diligence.
What are some red flags that would come up on your due diligence after doing this so many times?
The property's already lost a tax sale. That's the line of the jungle. You very rarely can overcome. Most of what we find in diligence can be fixable, but property taxes. Now let me break it down. Your property taxes go from I pay my taxes regularly, I'm delinquent, the lien is sold by that county. That doesn't mean you lost your property yet. It's when the lien is sold and the redemption period expires, you may have lost your property. That's when it's critical mass. Like, hey, and sellers will sell us stuff that not that they're trying to pull one over on an unsuspecting buyer. They've got a huge portfolio. They don't know what they have. And they can't keep track of it all. So we found a lot of times where the property is already lost the tax sale. The redemption period is expired. There's nothing you can do about it. Things like the assignment trail from Bank of America to hedge fund A to hedge fund B. There's missing something. You can fix that, right? Your custodian does a good job of fixing that. That's pretty much the biggest piece. I mean, you might find, in your title reports, there may be a title defect, which again, some of it's fixable. A scrivener's error, the little description is wrong. That's fixable. Other things may not be, but you're reviewing the title owners and encumbrance reports very carefully when you're doing that. But taxes are the big ticket item.
So when you were a debt collection professional and attorney for 20 years, and how did that assist you with what you're doing now? Because I imagine in both scenarios, you were working with borrowers that are getting behind and, you're working with them or you're correcting the situation. Is that pretty similar?
Yes, for the most part. In our law practice, we were actually doing a lot of business to business stuff. So I'm still dealing with a debtor, but not necessarily a homeowner.
Right.
But it does give me the experience to talk to. And when I first started out, I was doing all the loan modification myself. It does give me the experience and expertise to speak to a borrower without getting tripped up by FDCPA. There's things we used to get more involved in running out-of-state investing masterminds. And in that mastermind, there was two things that I always told, in our lectures. And that was there's one piece, basically we're an open book, right? There's no secret sauce to this stuff, right? One thing I can't teach, second piece I won't teach. The can't teach is I'm not going to teach anybody servicing. You're going to use a third-party servicer because the application of payments with federal regulations are just too complex to do it yourself. So we never advise that. Debt collection, I'm not going to teach someone in class because, again, 20 plus years, your head would explode if I gave you dumped all that knowledge on you. And two, I don't want to be taken out of context. Somebody says something stupid to a borrower and they sue you and they're like, hey, they took it wrong. So I won't teach debt collection. I strongly recommend using, building your team with professionals who are experts at it, because you get certified in debt collection and credit counseling. My junior partner, team lead in the loss mitigation department is 10 years plus experience doing that. So I don't have to do the loan mods to myself. He's very expert in what he does. So you don't do this at home. You just don't.
The one of the things is that you're saying about when non-performing mortgages, you can't get in touch with people. And this is something, I see from many years of self-managing and owning rental properties that, there's when people are getting behind, it's difficult to get in touch with them. Can you kind of go through, high end, what exactly would be your process with a non-performing mortgage? Like, how does that work where you're trying to contact borrower, you're trying to work with them, and where is it? Because I know you said like your last thing is really the foreclosure, which really gets them on the phone. But can you give us like a little overview of how you do that when you're just getting into a non-performing note and working with that?
Sure. So basically, it's kind of similar to like the sales approach, touch kind of thing. So what happens is you buy a loan and you're getting, the borrower's getting a notice from the prior servicer saying, hey, it's been, fun, being managing your defaulted loan, but now the loan's getting transferred to somebody else. So I get a letter from you. And I've had borrowers call me upon the letter going, hey, you're the new kid in town. Great, let's work something out, right? Because there's always this time frame where people react, and you can't ever predict when or how it'll be. And so they're getting the letter first, and they're getting a letter from my new servicer saying, hey, I'm the new kid on the block, right? We're making the outbound calls, right? They can choose to ignore them or they won't. Then they get the demand letter from the attorney, right? Because I always say we set a backstop. So we're not sitting around making calls and calls and calls for 6 months, hoping they'll get in touch with us. We'll give it a reasonable amount of time. And once the loan's boarded, we'll start foreclosure. Because again, we're actually trying to create the action to create the reaction. So they get a demand letter. Maybe they call the demand letter. Maybe they call when they get served. Maybe they never call and the property goes to foreclosure. We can't predict that. We do know that when they do call us, we will treat them with dignity and respect, and we'll work something out. All you got to do is get out of your own way and make it happen. But again, the timing that people call, I had a guy call me one time years ago on the eve of foreclosure sale, right? Why he didn't call, the reason he didn't call before then was good. There was a reason he didn't call before that. He called because he lived in Minnesota. He worked for the railroad. He just got a 65% wage increase. His child support obligations just finished, and he paid off his truck. And that gave him the ability to call me up and make a deal. I told you, paying off trucks is important, more important than living. And not because it's your shelter if you lose your house. It's paying off your truck is just a priority to people.
That's very interesting. What do you have states that you kind of avoid working in or not as interested in working in because of the foreclosure process or laws make it more difficult? And which ones would you kind of lean more towards interested in working in?
So that's a very good question. So going back to something you asked me before with regard to my legal background, we responded with how, I can effectively talk to a borrower, but my legal background also gives me the insight and kind of the objectivity and the resourcefulness to say, to solve a problem, like if we have to make a decision of how to, fix something or do something else. And I'm not the bad client to our attorneys because we have an attorney network all over the country, and I'm not licensed at all anymore. And I'm not licensed in their particular state anyway. So it's a matter of, I defer to their wisdom, and I don't want to be a bad client, be an overbearing client. So I don't memorize all the laws or regular policies and procedures in that state, but I can certainly give them, guidance and say, hey, I would do it this way, or how, if we explore doing it this way, does your state allow that procedure to happen, right? But having said that, so what was the question? I'm sorry, I've left my train of thought.
About states.
States. So I have a love-hate relationship with the state of Illinois. I've done very well financially, but the timeframes and the bureaucracy and the procedures just are pathetic. Because of my legal expertise, we set up a good attorney network. For years, we always were told and advised by just the industry itself to stay out of New York and New Jersey, especially New York, because the time frame was too long. Well, once upon a time, we go to a conference, we find an attorney who says, wait a second, I can, if you buy a loan that hasn't started foreclosure yet, then we can do it federally. instead of state, and we can do it faster. So while people are running out of New York, we're running in because we're getting good discounts to justify it. So and the last piece of it is when you build a pipeline, like I said, we've got about 300 plus loans in our portfolio right now. You build a pipeline and you say, hey, some stuff's going to take longer, some stuff's not. Like the story in Hawaii, we owned that loan. It went to sale two months after we bought the loan, right? Some stuff we're still a year or two later, we're still at not foreclosure yet. You just, when you first start out, it's like you only have one or two loans and like everything is breathing down his neck. It's got to happen yesterday. But when you build a pipeline, it's just the machine, and you just take it, and it all works out at the end.
Interesting. So we speak to a lot of syndicators on the show and interview them about, equity investing and stuff like this. And can you break us down of why, debt investing is a great addition to a portfolio and some of the things that you like about debt investing versus investing, holding the equity position?
Sure. So, obviously, we've been fortunate. It's a relationship-driven business to where I've got relationships with other hedge funds that it's kind of getting incestuous. And as I started this business, I would have the fortune of doing business with a hedge fund or so that said, okay, and it's kind of like I used to call it a forward flow, meaning I could call you up every month, every other month, whatever, and say, what do you have now, right? And they had inventory to keep feeding me, right? Mm-hmm. So I haven't really worked with tons and tons of hedge funds because I've always had this forward flow type relationship. So for us, we've been blessed that we've got sufficient deal flow. So we're not out there marketing like maniacs with letters and all that kind of stuff. So you got I'm lazy. I don't like to hunt. So we've got people bringing us, the hedge funds are bringing us their tapes right and left. Right. That's one piece. Two is you're not getting the discounts in any market. You're not getting the discounts even in a crash when you can pick up a off market wholesale property for dirt. Not going to be able to get the discounts that we can. Third, you just got the resourcefulness of the exit strategies. Right. So there's really no other, and the different options. The variety of options. Is why it should be a diverse in anybody's portfolio. But it's not. It's not a common. Like not everybody's enamored with multifamily fix and flips. That's what's on. That's the wholesale. That's what's on everybody's radar. Right. This is a unique strategy. It's not for the faint of heart. And you got to be patient because, again, not every loan you buy is going to go to auction in 2 months.
Yeah. Interesting. So dealing with real estate investors and real estate owners for many years, what are common mistakes that you would see real estate investors or note investors make early on?
From a note investing standpoint, they're just not sufficiently they don't have the sufficient expertise. So the biggest thing is they make two big mistakes, which one is they overpay for the loans when they don't know what they're doing. So one, they're not going to do very well, and they're not going to stay in the business very long. For us, it hurts because now our sellers are, hey, if I can get it from this schmo over here, why am I selling it to you for less? That's tough, right? So you got to be sufficiently educated, sufficiently trained, or just tag along with someone, partner with someone else who can show you the ropes. That I think is key. I learned that way. My first deals were with others that knew even though I had legal experience with debt instruments, et cetera, I still partnered up with others who knew the ins and outs of the note investing world specifically to help me along. And even because I didn't know everything back then, I still know everything. So that's truly major important.
Jay, so going from a bartender, attorney to now into your current profession, how has your relationship towards money changed over the years?
It's not so much the relationship with money; it's a relationship with time.
Yeah.
Bartending, you've got 1 or 2 days off, and your evenings are placating others and enjoying yourself. But your life is you get home at 3 o'clock in the morning and you sleep till whatever, and you get back and do it again. Our law practice, we grew to 45 employees, and we're too far inside it. I had no time. Here in the beginning, I had no time because we're managing a business, but we're blessed that we've got a terrific team, terrific staff, and so I'm able to manage my team rather than doing it myself. So I'm always seeking the abilities to carve out more time in my life, spending more time with my family, taking more vacations, things like that. Money helps facilitate that, but it's really, you can make you don't need $1 million to say now I can take a vacation. You just got to be able to say, build your business. So you're working on your business, not in your business. And my advice is, life's too short, and you just need to strike the balance. And I'm a workaholic by trade. I enjoy what I do. I do adopt the motto of, for those who love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And I certainly subscribe to that. But carving out the ability to say, take a step back and manage and delegate is what I've learned over the course, rather than just the relation to money.
That's a very good answer. So as we wrap up here, just one last question. What do you think are the main factors that have contributed to your success over the years?
Good partnership with a current partner, building a strong team behind us. My guys our staff and junior partners are very, very collaborative among each other. We're very blessed. I mean, we're a small company. We've got 10, 12 employees and junior partners. So we all are collaborative amongst each other. And even in this environment where it's all remote, the days of, and there's still, we've been exposed to Zoom by necessity back in 2020. Now I subscribe to that thought. Are we doing Zoom by necessity or by desire at this point? Because we had a firm retreat back in April. And as we're going around the conference room, I sat there and I'm realizing that while we're able to build a strong team because we can recruit nationwide, right, which is helpful, I realized that the triangulation was such that the team consisted of, I'm in the Phoenix suburb. Majority of our staff actually lives in Phoenix, or lives in the Phoenix area. And so I kind of, get this brainstorm while we're sitting in this conference room going, maybe, can we kind of forecast what the horizon looks like in the next couple of years, right? I said, I wouldn't be, too heartbroken. Let's all get get office space, buy a building or rent a space, and, increase the collaboration internally. And everybody was like, wow, that's fantastic. Because we collaborate well by Zoom and by phone, but in office space, it works out. Yeah. And our investor relations person who lives like in rural Texas with their goats and chickens and all that freaks out and going, wait a second, I can't find a they'll never be able to find a place in the Phoenix area like that. I'm like, but you know what? Our atmosphere and our culture is like, hey, so you fly in, once a month or whatever, right? So it's not prohibitive to say you have to move here. I would never do that to a staff and say you have to move here. I've seen other companies implode when they require their staff to do that. So I think that the collaboration, the important key team members that we have is just what makes our company thrive and grow.
Oh, that's fantastic. So how can the listeners learn more about you, your business, and also you have your podcast, learning more about that?
Certainly. So we are found at Scottsdale Mortgage Investments, ScottsdaleMortgageInvestments.com. If you want to get on our trade desk and see what things we have for sale, go onto the website. There's a button to click for get on our NDA, and you get on our website that way. Our podcast is the Real Estate Mastermind. It airs twice a month on the first and third Tuesdays. We had a terrific guest yesterday, Mr. Charles Carillo, and it was a great show yesterday. That can be found at www.remastermind.live.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, Jay. I will put links to all of that into the show notes, and looking forward to connecting with you here in the near future.
My pleasure, Charles. Thank you so much for having me.
Have a great rest of your day.
All right.
Hi guys, it's Charles from the Global Investors Podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're interested in getting involved with real estate, but you don't know where to begin, set up a free 30-minute strategy call with me at schedulecharles.com. That's schedulecharles.com. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Global Investor Podcast. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe on iTunes or Google Play to get new weekly episodes. For more resources and to receive our newsletter, please visit globalinvestorpodcast.com. And don't forget to join us next week for another episode.
Nothing in this episode should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Any investment opportunities mentioned on this podcast are limited to accredited investors. Any investments will only be made with proper disclosure, subscription documentation, and are subject to all applicable laws. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Syndication Superstars LLC exclusively.